Hello and welcome back to the Tragic Mundane Tragic podcast. Last episode was very sad and very brute and very quick, um, which is kind of the point. It's realistic to what we're trying to achieve here, because that quickness is testimony to what it is, from my perspective and from their perspective, for how it became our mundanity, that we can talk about it in quick, short form. But welcome back if you didn't listen to the first episode. Here we talk about the tragedies of life that become our mundanities and how that in itself is innately tragic. And last episode we talked about the death of my mother and the life I had with my father afterwards, and when I started getting into my bad habits, um, propagated by a what I believe to be a lack of control within my own life and a control from others, which we talked about. And so let's get right back into it. So I'm joined here with my guest Gojispit and with my guest Grimsby. Uh,
Howdy.
Goji, would you like to introduce yourself?
Me first, I guess.
Yes, you first.
Okay, I am Gojispit. I stream. I guess I podcast also now, and do a bit of technical work. That's about it.
All right. And Grimsby.
I am Grimsby. I do not a lot, to be honest. I sort of just follow around Ravens and see what he wants me to do.
All right, cool. Accurate and quick. So, last episode we ended off on talking about control of a child, and um, that was one of the examples I believe to be a tragedy within mundanity. Whereas when a child is born, they are, the emotional, intellectual sponge that they are. They pick up everything. If you are in a bad household, they pick up that and they normalize it. That becomes a mundanity. And I know I'm saying mundanity and tragedy a lot, but there's only so many perfect words to describe situations like these. And um, the normalization of toxic environments, I believe, is a huge detriment to our society. And Goji was talking last episode about how a child needs to learn meaningful lessons, and not only meaningful lessons, a lesson that is meaningful enough for a child to interpret when they need to know it, and for future sake, the emotional scars you talked about. And in that same effort, we talked about how those scars are inflicted by not only the environment but the education they receive in the environment. And so, with that, I would like to lead us back into talking about the tragedy and woe of myself. Um, where we left off was I was 12 in a small town in Groton, a military based town, and I was getting. No, we left off when I was moving to my grandparents' house, where I stopped smoking cigarettes and smoking weed, and I started um, using other substances like food and sleep and general apathy. Apathy was a big part of my life. So to set the scene, I was taken away by CPS and given to my grandparents when I was in the fifth grade, and I went on to live with my grandparents for 6 years after that. And for the first couple of years, I put on a lot of weight. I was pretty big to begin with, but I put on a lot of weight, and I've had diet problems stemming back to before this time. And I can remember specific times in my childhood where I had like a lot of problems with food because either we couldn't afford it, or there was too much of it, or whatever the case was. Like, for example, right before I was taken away by CPS, I was living in a hotel in what is called East Lyme, in Connecticut, and I had no food that I could prepare myself because I was 12, um, and obviously not a chef at 12 years old. And so there was a Hungry Man TV dinner in the freezer that was meant for me to eat, and we didn't have a working microwave, nor oven, nor stove. So I had to, and this sounds very sad, but I had to take what food was there and warm it with the warmth of my hands until it stopped being rock hard enough so that I could eat it ice cold. And that was the only thing that I ate that whole day. And like since the breakfast the day before. And I remember that very vividly. I remember that very accurately, exactly what I was feeling and how hopeless I was in that situation. And I feel like that was a major contributor to just because when I get like to a major contributor to my anxiety and stuff because I do feel that when I get scared I wouldn't say stress eat because it's not stress I like fear eat, if that makes sense, if either of you have been through that. Like I need to fill my anxiety with food because if I'm tasting food I'm indulging my senses rather than existing within the dread that is of my situation.
Mm-hmm.
um so that led me to an amount of eating disorders. um I was 350 at my largest, coming up on 360. And like Goji said, we're weight brothers. I'm down to 240 at this point, almost over 100 pounds. um or I don't know how many stone that is for your the the imperial audience. um Hint, 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 hint.
Wait, isn't it metric?
Is stone metric?
I'm pretty sure. I have no idea.
I do not
No,
think stone is
no,
metric.
metric is meters. Is meters and liters. So no, it wouldn't be
Wait,
grams. Grams.
yeah,
I have
grams.
no idea.
I don't weigh. I don't know how many liters I weigh. Anyway, um, let me. Where was I? Right. So I was gaining massive amounts of weight, and then I um started having to find other ways to sustain myself, to sustain my emotional state. That including marijuana and a lot of other stuff. A lot of other stuff I indulged in, from painkillers to you know psychotropics, um, to a lot of things one shouldn't be doing. Um, the charcuterie board of drugs I indulged myself in, and I continued that for a while, smoking cigarettes and vaping, because I thought that was cool. Not that okay. I'd rather not say I thought it was cool. I thought it was something that I could find enough entertainment in, that like the aura of going to smoke a cigarette was very alluring to me. Like the relaxation sense, like going out, having a smoke, and having to think, that was very attractive to me, and that's why I started back smoking again. But so I had cut off all connection with my father, and I was going to school regularly, and then I started drinking along with everything else I was doing, and I had just one day I just couldn't force myself to get out of bed, and um, I had missed a total of 143 in school hours after 2 years, and they said either we're gonna start having to call truancy or we're gonna you're gonna just drop out or whatever. And I feel like there was a strong will just for me to give up and drop out and go to a technical school, which I did. But I feel like there was a huge, not necessarily from my family, but from the district, that like, I was like dragging the populace down. And long story short, I dropped out and I went to a technical school and I failed a drug test there. And failing that drug test put me on a probationary period, which eventually got me kicked out. And then once again went to live with my father. This is all filler just to explain my situation now, because I don't think this is where the tragedy lies. I think this is where the outcome of the tragedy lies. So I left living with my father and his girlfriend when we got kicked out of his place because um, when living with my grandparents, I started working on a weed farm, and that weed farm allowed me to have the knowledge to make another weed farm, and he wanted to do that with me. So got kicked out of her place for that, and I moved to Florida, and my life has been on the up and up since then. I'm sober, I'm clean, I'm losing weight and stuff, and it's given me the perspective that I'm laying down today. So, like I said, this podcast is an in-depth look on the tragedies that become our mundanities, that become our tragedies once again. So, I laid a lot out between the first and second episode of this, and I just, before I really get into the meat potatoes of this, Goji Grimsby, do you have any questions, any curiosities?
What was like you said you moved to Florida, you got yourself cleaned up and everything, you're losing weight. What was the turning point? What was when you saw that making these changes were going to put you in the direction that did you want to go in that direction or was it something that you were dragged into? I guess is a better question.
I would say definitely dragged into, because I lost a lot of the weight just from the Florida heat. But nobody can make you get sober. Um,
Mm-mm.
they throw you in a dry tank for a year, and you come out and you go get high. You know, for myself, I just I was sober for about a month, not smoking pot or anything when I got down here, and I just a lot of opportunity arose, and I couldn't urge myself to do it. I
Mm.
couldn't I couldn't get up to the task. I just felt like there's too much has shifted, and I wasn't gonna drive myself into the hole that I was in.
That's it's kind of how I quit smoking cigarettes. Is one day I just looked at them and I'm like, life is different. I'm bored of this. I can smoke. I can
Mm,
blow smoke rings. My life is complete with cigarettes. So,
yeah, yeah. Quest completed.
yeah, quest complete. Time to move on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I guess the other question is given that you can look back at it and have almost. I mean, things do fade over time, but you have kind of a uh, you have a 2020 vision looking back, and you see where you've
Coach.
been and everything else. Uh, moving forward, how much does that inform your current direction you're moving in? I mean, yeah, obviously it's a lot, but is there specific moments where you go, never again? I just, it helps you to motivate you forward stronger than you were before.
Um, so there are moments in my past where when you wake up and you just like your brain's like, "Hey, you remember this? You regret this, right?" Yeah, that's fun. And there was a lot sprinkled in. Like I remember on one time I was on an eating binge, and we had like little to no food in the house, and I had gotten really high, and I was starving. I wasn't really starving. I had ate plenty that day, but I was, starving in my mind. I thought I was hungry,
Yeah,
rather than feeding the void monster. And I had been caught by my sibling's boyfriend at the time, in my room in the darkness, watching anime, eating a bowl for the listeners about 2 gallons big, about that big, full of cocoa powder, pancake mix, honey, and water to mix the pancake mix, because I was afraid that if I made pancakes, I would get in trouble for eating so much. So I just decided to eat the dry mix. And to be caught in such like a primal like how would one say how like to be caught in such a disgusting state was definitely like a like what the fuck are you doing with yourself, like
Yeah.
um
It's that moment you go,
or
do I want this anymore? Do I really?
yeah, like looking at that from his perspective is definitely like a moment of change for myself. And then um another time was when I was obviously picking through a carpet for pieces of marijuana, and I had put a piece of hair in my bowl by accident. I thought it was weed because I was high as a kite, and I smoked it, and I like it caught fire in my mouth, and I felt like that was a sign. Um, yeah, those I feel like those are sprinkled for everyone, but mine really like connect to each point I wanted to change about myself. Each point that I've, I dropped my standards and normalized my tragedies so much to the point that, I was eating raw pancake batter. I was, you know, scrounging like, a drug addict through the carpet trying to find anything to get me high. I was um hiding in the woods all day so that nobody would find me because I couldn't stand to have a conversation with someone about my mental state. Like, um, um, I was just there was a lot of cries for attention and they were never answered. And those like were another thing that just like propelled me to see myself as another person of what I could be rather than what I was.
Hmm.
Um, and I think about those a lot. But I live to the standard of no regrets. I can't regret them because I can do nothing to change them.
Hmm.
I actually
Um,
have a question.
Okay.
what's that?
You said everything was on the up and up ever since you got to Florida. What exactly happened in Florida that you know helped?
Well, I'm continuing my education. I'm going to get my diploma at 19. Um, I'm in a better house. I'm not dead of an overdose yet. I'm losing weight. um, uh, I've gotten out of the toxic relationships I was in back in my hometown because there was a lot of toxicity going on. Like I broke up with this one girl because all we would do is we would just go in the woods and get high instead of actually going and getting our education. Um, and I mostly broke up with her just because I was leaving my hometown and going to that technical school. But yeah, no, I'm just like I have an actual plan for myself. Like I know where I'm going and I know why I'm going. And I know how to get there. So that was never there in my life. I never had the structure or the foundation to be able to figure that out. And now that's like what I have now, and I'm very happy for it.
Hmm.
Hmm. So to the meat and potatoes of exactly why I wanted to talk about this and why my life is a prime example of it is because there were so many what I would say tragedies in my life that other people see, my mother dying, my father being neglectful and verbally abusive, which I didn't talk about, which I also glanced over just for time's sake. There's a lot to dig into. My scattered family, dead relatives, etc., etc. These are all tragedies that have become normalized. Like the people who go, like, "Are you okay?" "Oh, I've been through worse." That normalized sense of pain and suffering is hard for people to recognize of what tragedy that is within itself, right? Like the people who, not in the sense of how you said Goji, but in the people who think that like kids should have as tough as experience as them to truly understand the world when the world changes to allow them not to have that experience. Like that's a huge moment of the world, and without that perspective, I think that's like a huge pitfall of society. And over the course of the next few episodes, we'll be going into that. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I had uh I had a thought of normalizing and stuff like that. Uh Way back in the day, go figure. I was teased a lot in school. But then I saw some pictures of myself during that time and I'm like, "Oh, dear. I would tease me."
Mm-hmm.
So, I was mentally immature and did not react well to harsh criticisms, stuff like that. I became an easy punching bag, is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So it came to the point I had to look at back at the people that were still teasing me at like 21. They're not in my life anymore. They've moved on. They probably have kids themselves. They're trying to live a life. I am not that person that was teased that long ago. Um, so there is a one thing where it's like it became a mundane thing for me. It's like, oh, they moved on. I moved on. But it allowed me to make it so mundane that the words didn't hurt anymore, that the actions didn't hurt anymore, that I actually became stronger because how much that meant to me during that time and the time after, and how little it means to me now. So I kind
Mm-hmm.
of understand the whole, but it's still kind of a tragedy because instead of making friends, I was having issues. I was having social issues, massive social issues, and there was nobody there to help. And that was tragic. And that actually informed up to about 21, 25 is about where I started getting over everything. Um, that whole time was me not maturing at all, mentally, really, because I was still stuck in that trap that was lined up before me. But
Mm-hmm.
then I look at where I'm at now in that situation. If somebody tries to come and tease me now, and I'm just like, who are you? you know,
You
who do you,
you
who do
come
you
to
think
me,
you are?
peasant.
Yeah. Why do you think I should care? Yes, I don't remember squeezing your head. Why am I getting shit out of it? Stuff like that. It's made me a stronger person in the process. So I can see it. Um, you can let it run you over, and I think that's more tragic than anything else. Everybody's had a problem. Everybody's had harshness in their life and everything. If they let that moment run over them, that's where the huge tragedy is. Or that, like you said, that tragic moment just becomes their normal and there's no moving forward. That is huge tragedy also. I see that in that. And talking about the different situations that comes from, especially people's reactions to tragedy too. uh People that like try to make themselves part of the narrative of a tragedy. Something happens in a state way back, way out of their reach. They can't have any impact on it. They're not going to have any words about it. Or what am I saying, not words about, but they, the words
Like
that they say
witnessing it,
cannot
like
impact the situation. They cannot make it better. They cannot make it worse. They can't touch it. And yet they make themselves the center of this narrative that they've created for themselves to make use the tragedy as a
the tragedy fits into the normality. Like this is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is my experience, and then the tragedy of that is that they neglect to represent the tragedy of the first hand experiences of that.
Yeah, yeah. They dump the firsthand experiences to make it theirs. It's like uh, uh, there was a cop that was, or back when cops were really hated on the internet and stuff. There was a cop that
Oh,
had raped.
back when those are
Back
still.
when, well, no, this was
I don't think there's any
this
back
is
when at
when
the
it
moment.
first happened. When people learned you could do it, they weren't very good at
Hmm.
it to start with. Um, there was a cop that was actually on trial like 5 years back or something when that happened, where he had raped a few people, And I had a friend that she was afraid of all cops because they rape people. And it's like, no, no, that isn't how it works. Yes,
Mhm.
there's a possibility, but 10 to 1,
Mhm.
most interactions with cops will not turn into that. and
Mhm.
and I've seen people try to take on other people's tragedies to like you said, get rid of the first person narrative and make it their own. I
Mhm.
guess I think I just went in a circle with
To not make to not make arbitrary of your friend's emotions. I'm just having a giggle at myself, imagining like getting pulled over for a ticket and like her rolling down her window, and the cops like, "Do you know how fast you're going?" She's like, "Get your hands away from me!" Like, I'm
yeah.
enjoying that. I'm enjoying that thought.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm. But that's another thing we can talk about is somebody taking on somebody else's tragedy. I can understand if you're in the town and you're helping the family that the tragedy happened to, that's one thing. But when you have no impact to it whatsoever, yet it's what you harp on, it's what you talk about, it's what you freak out about. You make assumptions in other directions because of the tragedy that happened. You're not helping the situation. You're just making the
Mhm.
situation worse in your area.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if this is directly related, but there I say this so hmm words um
Three really
Always
good
close enough
starts.
so you can
Yes.
get to
yeah
them.
um I find it far when people not only when they try to like ingratiate themselves into a tragedy, but lie about having their own tragedies to people who've actually had them.
Oh yeah.
Like I had, I don't even want to say a friend at this point, but I knew a person who would. She was a compulsive liar. She lied about almost everything that she did.
Mhm. Mhm.
And one of the things she lied about, which I believed at the time because I was very young and very, very stupid, she said that she had cancer. And I
Oh.
don't know why I believe this because she never brought it up to anyone else. And I completely believed her. And she also said pretty horrible things about her family and pretty horrible things um, about her parents and horrible things about her friends. Just everything was awful, and it was all everyone else's fault. And I remember a time that she was talking about child abuse and how she had such a hard life growing up. And I think it was this. What was her name? I can't remember her name. Um, it was this girl who was like 2 years older than us, maybe. She
That's
who had
let's make a
actually
false name for her anyway.
had a legitimately hard childhood and had like emotional issues stemming from her father. It's a pretty sad thing all around. But the way that she was gloating about how hard her life was when there was a person actually still feeling the repercussions of their shitty life, and it was this person right there standing in front of them talking about uh, how it made them feel better and how they're a better and stronger person for it, despite the fact that it never even happened to them.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that they can even create a narrative like that.
Hmm.
It's I don't know. I know that wasn't directly related, but I felt it was poignant.
It's kind of related, and I've noticed that usually when somebody does that, it's because there is a deficiency in their life. They have to create this narrative that catches them the attention, and they start with, look at how good I'm at this, look at how good I'm at that, and then all of a sudden, well, that doesn't work as well. It doesn't give me the fix I'm looking for. So then you create tragedy, and you borrow the tragedy from the people around you because you're not creating your own. uh, and that's there's a tragedy in and of itself sitting somewhere in there that brought them to this point. And it's a really tough subject, really, because I want to hold them accountable for their actions, but I also kind of know that their actions are, somebody else has to be accountable for the fact that they're taking these actions. In the end, it's their fault. They have made the choices that brought them there. But rooting out the the origin of the problem would help healing and pushing forward to a better outcome, I
Mhm.
think.
Sometimes I wonder whether it's just ignorance of people's actual feelings around their own issues, and just complete or whether it's complete disregard for other people's feelings. Because I'd like to believe that not everyone's a complete sociopath, and that people who make up these stories aren't, aren't just doing it because they have absolutely no feeling for anyone who's actually gone through them. But uh, it it's
You
not a
kind of
great.
get that feeling.
You get that feeling, yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
I like when it comes to issues on that, I came up with a saying a while back, and I feel like it's very poignant. It's especially relative to this, it's don't eat the food, don't sit at the table, don't have experience with it, you don't say on it, you don't speak on it. And that's how I lived a lot of my life. Like I'm not, I've dealt with a lot of racism in my hometown, especially, and a lot of problems with that. But I've never really, like, I've never been, besides, verbally and physically, I've never been like actually discriminated against. Like, I've never been denied a job for my skin color or anything like that. So I don't try to like push myself to any sort of narrative like that. I feel like that's like a real like thing I hold to myself greatly. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. What was it? My train of thought just derailed. Like it was a 5 car pileup. It was horrible. Um, I've seen people utilize that, that excuse. Try to capitalize on it. But I've seen others that are just it. It matters so little of the person, because I have met both good people and bad people, color, race, sex, the whole 9 yards.
Mhm.
It does not all of a sudden give you a you can be an asshole free card.
Mhm.
Um, so I never understood how well, I am weird, so I've never understood how people can decide on somebody else by arbitrary uh, mind went blank, arbitrary distinctions of the person, or that it's the story I always tell. There's a gay couple I know. These guys are amazing. They would give the shirt off their back. You're like, oh my gosh, I got nowhere to sleep. They're like, sleep at our place. You're gonna have to find a place, but you can sleep at our place for a few days and stuff like that. They will bend over backwards to help you. Then you got this other guy who you're like, hey, good morning, how are you doing today? And he looks at you like you kicked his puppy. And he treats you poorly because you're not like him at all. And I'm just, how can you live with that? I mean, you're you could say, okay, they're both gay, but that doesn't say anything about them at all. There's not a single thing in that word that explains who they are as a person. And so I
I,
never understood when people
I
use that.
just I just realized now that because the second episode of, or the second part of the first episode of this is on video. I look very white due to the white balance in this room. I'm mixed. I'm half Puerto Rican. I realize that makes me look like a giant asshole talking about my discrimination experience.
Yeah, I was wondering how
Well,
that's gonna go down with.
White guilt.
well, I
You look,
looked over and I'm like, wow,
yeah,
it must be the white balance.
you're looking like a sheet of A4 paper.
Yeah, no, I am not in person. It is just the white balance in this room.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But yeah, there's my also like off the rails rant again.
well, with that, I think we should conclude this episode, the first part and the second part was about my life and my experiences and how those shaped into what I view this philosophy as, and we'll be exploring that on a much grander scale in the next coming episodes. And I hope you join us for that. We'll be available on Spotify, Castbox, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast, and on YouTube at Tragedy Mundane Tragedy Podcast. And I hope you look forward to listening to our next one. I'm FakeRavens. You can find me at FakeRavens on Twitter, Instagram, and such. You can find our past projects on Spotify at FakeRavens as well. Um, at Real Talk FakeRavens. And Goji, would you like to plug your pluggable?
Okay, you can catch me at twitch.tv/Gojispit. I stream Monday through Friday, 6 Central to 8 o'clock. Usually, sometimes I go beyond that. You can find me on Twitter at DragonSpork. You can also find me on YouTube under Gojispit. And I put stuff up there every once in a while. Hopefully, more YouTube content will pop. Otherwise, that's about it on my end.
And Grimsby can also be found as at where I can be found.
Actually, if
he is
you want to
hiding from the federal government.
If you want to get in contact with me, it's fairly simple. All you need to do is draw a pentagram in salt and blood on the floor of a church, chant 3 times my name, and I should appear to you or my receptionist. So either way. If you want to get in contact with me any other way, I also have an email account.
Is that how I purchase your OnlyFans? Just like Summoning Circle?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
you do it.
It's just a tiny bit more salt than blood if you want to get the OnlyFans. It's kind of an odd mixture.
No, it's a different types. You have to go goat, all the way goat.
Oh,
And not
right.
crappy goat. You have to find the top quality goats.
And you better get that pink salt. You can't use table salt. Ugh. What are you doing?
You can use Himalayan pink salt.
There you go.
he just like spawns out of the circle and like just bitch slaps you if you use wrong kind of salt. Like...
Yeah.
He's gone. It's like well worth the money.
Well, that is the end of our part 2 of episode 1. Auf Wiedersehen.
Au revoir.
And goodbye.